You never think it'll happen to you. Not after 40 years. Not with 4 children sleeping just upstairs. But sometimes the person you gave everything to decides you're no longer enough. One night, he simply walks out and doesn't look back. No goodbye worth remembering, no apology worth repeating, no money, no mercy, just silence. And a front door that closed harder than it needed to. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't run after him like the woman he thought I was. I just sat there in the dark, listening to the clock on the wall and the footsteps of my daughters coming down the stairs. The youngest was still holding her stuffed rabbit. The oldest was already trying to be brave. They asked me where he went. I told them the truth. I didn't know. All I knew was that he left us with nothing, not even a reason. It's strange how fast everything can fall apart. One day you're a wife, a mother, a woman with a home. The next, you're just a name on a mortgage you can't pay, with mouths to feed and no one coming to save you. I looked at my daughters that night, 4 little girls in pajamas waiting for answers I didn't have, and I made a promise I didn't say out loud. We will survive this. Even if it breaks me, even if it takes everything I have left, we will survive. And we did. But not the way anyone expected. The morning after he left, the silence in the house was louder than any fight we ever had. The girls ate cereal without speaking. The kitchen felt colder, like the walls knew something was missing. I washed the same dish 3 times without realizing it. Emily sat across from me watching. Her eyes were too old for 11. She didn't cry. She just stared, like she was measuring how broken I'd become overnight. Sophie finally asked the question they were all holding in. Is Daddy coming back? I didn't lie. I couldn't. I just shook my head and said, not today. That was all I could manage without breaking in front of them. After breakfast, they scattered through the house, trying to pretend everything was normal. Grace curled up with a picture book. Chloe played with her dolls like nothing happened. But even at 5, she knew something was wrong. Every few minutes she looked toward the door, like she expected it to open again. It didn't. I walked into the bedroom we used to share. The closet door stood open, half the hangers empty. Drawers pulled out, some left half closed. The bed was still unmade from the night before. His cologne still hung in the air, like he wanted to haunt me one more day. On the nightstand, his wedding ring sat in a small ceramic dish. I picked it up. It was heavier than I remembered. I thought about throwing it, out the window, down the drain, into the trash. But I didn't. I set it back down and closed the drawer slowly, like that could shut out the pain with it. Later that day I opened the mail. Late notices. Overdue bills. A shut-off warning from the power company. My name was on all of them, not his, just mine. That's when the fear hit me. Not because I didn't know we were in trouble, but because I didn't know how deep it really was. I'd let him handle the money for years. I trusted him. I stayed home, raised our daughters, made every birthday cake, folded every sock, carried the house on my back, and now all I had to show for it was a pile of debt and 4 mouths to feed. That evening, as the girls watched TV on the floor, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a cheap calculator, trying to make numbers stretch that didn't want to move. I wrote groceries and circled it 3 times. I stared at the word, like it might feed us if I looked hard enough. Emily came in quietly and stood by the fridge. "There's no milk," she said. I nodded. She didn't ask for more. She just walked back to the others like she understood what that meant. That night, I lay awake with Chloe pressed against my side, her small hand wrapped around my wrist. I watched the ceiling fan spin. It made a soft clicking sound, like something inside it was loose. I knew how that felt. I didn't sleep. I didn't even close my eyes. I just kept thinking, this is my life now. He's not coming back, and no one's coming to help. But in that quiet, I found something I didn't expect, an ache that wasn't fear. It was fire, small, buried deep, but burning all the same. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fall apart. Not in front of my daughters and not in this house. They were watching, and I was still their mother. Even if everything else had been taken away. The morning after he left, the silence in the house was louder than any fight we ever had. The girls ate cereal without speaking. The kitchen felt colder, like the walls knew something was missing. I washed the same dish 3 times without realizing it. Emily sat across from me watching. Her eyes were too old for 11. She didn't cry. She just stared, like she was measuring how broken I'd become overnight. Sophie finally asked the question they were all holding in. Is Daddy coming back? I didn't lie. I couldn't. I just shook my head and said, not today. That was all I could manage without breaking in front of them. After breakfast, they scattered through the house, trying to pretend everything was normal. Grace curled up with a picture book. Chloe played with her dolls like nothing happened. But even at 5, she knew something was wrong. Every few minutes she looked toward the door, like she expected it to open again. It didn't. I walked into the bedroom we used to share. The closet door stood open, half the hangers empty. Drawers pulled out, some left half closed. The bed was still unmade from the night before. His cologne still hung in the air, like he wanted to haunt me one more day. On the nightstand, his wedding ring sat in a small ceramic dish. I picked it up. It was heavier than I remembered. I thought about throwing it, out the window, down the drain, into the trash. But I didn't. I set it back down and closed the drawer slowly, like that could shut out the pain with it. Later that day I opened the mail. Late notices. Overdue bills. A shut-off warning from the power company. My name was on all of them, not his, just mine. That's when the fear hit me. Not because I didn't know we were in trouble, but because I didn't know how deep it really was. I'd let him handle the money for years. I trusted him. I stayed home, raised our daughters, made every birthday cake, folded every sock, carried the house on my back, and now all I had to show for it was a pile of debt and 4 mouths to feed. That evening, as the girls watched TV on the floor, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a cheap calculator, trying to make numbers stretch that didn't want to move. I wrote groceries and circled it 3 times. I stared at the word, like it might feed us if I looked hard enough. Emily came in quietly and stood by the fridge. "There's no milk," she said. I nodded. She didn't ask for more. She just walked back to the others like she understood what that meant. That night, I lay awake with Chloe pressed against my side, her small hand wrapped around my wrist. I watched the ceiling fan spin. It made a soft clicking sound, like something inside it was loose. I knew how that felt. I didn't sleep. I didn't even close my eyes. I just kept thinking, this is my life now. He's not coming back, and no one's coming to help. But in that quiet, I found something I didn't expect, an ache that wasn't fear. It was fire, small, buried deep, but burning all the same. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fall apart. Not in front of my daughters and not in this house. They were watching, and I was still their mother. Even if everything else had been taken away, the town didn't waste time choosing sides, and it sure didn't choose mine. By the end of the first week, people weren't asking what happened. They were already telling their version of it, quietly, of course, in whispers behind hands, at the market, after church, in the school parking lot. I heard she pushed him away. Maybe she wasn't what he needed anymore. Men don't just leave for no reason. They didn't say it to my face. They never do. They just looked a little too long, smiled a little too politely, spoke a little too softly when I walked into the room. At the grocery store, I caught Evelyn standing by the produce with 2 other women. Their heads bent together like pigeons pecking at crumbs. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. "Ran off with someone younger. Can't say I blame him." When she noticed me behind her, Evelyn gave me that smile, the one that's all teeth and no warmth. "Oh, Maggie, you look tired. Are you holding up all right?" I smiled back, but I didn't answer. I just picked up a bruised apple and moved on. It's strange how people you thought were friends vanish the moment your life stops making them comfortable. The women I used to have coffee with after Sunday service suddenly had somewhere else to be. The couples Richard and I used to dine with didn't return my calls. One even crossed the street to avoid saying hello. And the silence from my own family? That cut the deepest. I called my sister Linda, just to hear her familiar voice. She answered on the third ring, distracted. "You know I love you," she said quickly, before I could even say hello. "But I can't get in the middle of this." I wasn't asking her to choose sides. I was asking her if she had any milk we could borrow, but I swallowed it. I thanked her anyway and hung up before she could hear my voice crack. That Sunday, I sat alone at church. I wore the same dress I'd worn 2 years ago to Emily's piano recital. Simple, clean, a little faded. Evelyn slid into the pew in front of me, her perfume too strong, her voice too loud when she greeted others. She didn't turn around once. Pastor Reed gave a sermon about grace, about how storms reveal the strength of our roots. His voice was calm, like the rain outside, and for the first time all week, I felt something in my chest loosen. After the service, he found me by the door. "You all right, Maggie?" he asked gently. I nodded because it was easier than telling the truth. "If you ever need to talk," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder, "my door is always open." I didn't cry, but something in me softened, just a little. On the way home, the girls were quiet in the back seat. Grace hummed to herself. Sophie leaned her forehead against the window. Emily was staring straight ahead. From the rearview mirror, I saw the way she blinked fast, like she didn't want me to know she was holding something in. Back at home, I made them peanut butter sandwiches and pretended it was enough. That night, I found an old notebook in the kitchen drawer. I opened to a blank page and wrote 2 words at the top. "Start over." And under that, I wrote a question I didn't have an answer to yet. How? I used to clip coupons just to feel smart, like I was in control of something. Back then, it was a choice, a habit, a way to stretch the grocery money so I could afford a treat for the girls every now and then. Now it wasn't a choice. It was survival. I sat at the kitchen table with bills spread out like a crime scene. Past due, final notice, disconnect warning. I didn't even know we were behind. He never said a word, just paid what he paid until he didn't. I checked the bank account again. $38.17. The fridge was almost empty. 2 eggs, a slice of cheese, half a jar of peanut butter, milk, gone, bread, gone, meat, hadn't seen any in a week. I opened the cabinet and counted the cans. Corn, beans, 1 sad can of peaches I was saving for a birthday that suddenly felt too far away. I pawned my wedding ring first. The man behind the counter didn't ask questions. He just took it, weighed it, and handed me a number that felt like an insult. $75 for a life. I took it. At the store, I moved slow. Not because I was tired, but because I was doing math in my head with every step. Milk, bread, rice, eggs, a pack of chicken thighs, toilet paper or soap. Had to choose one. I chose soap. Chloe asked for cereal with the cartoon bear on the box. I told her maybe next week. She didn't cry. She just nodded and walked back to the cart, dragging her little shoes across the floor. Back home, I cooked rice and beans and tried to make it look special. I added a little butter, lit a candle, put it in the center of the table like it was someone's birthday. The girls didn't ask why. After dinner, Emily pulled me aside. "Do we have enough?" she asked. "Enough for what?" "For life, food, school stuff, you know." I looked at her and saw the question she wasn't asking out loud. She was 11, but her eyes were learning the weight of adult worry. "We're okay," I said. She didn't believe me, but she nodded anyway, and that broke my heart more than anything. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again. When you're a mother, you don't get the luxury of falling apart. You feel the fear, but you keep moving. You cry in silence, behind doors, after bedtime. You save the last bite of food for someone else. You carry the weight so they don't have to. And even when your hands are empty, you still find a way to give. I closed my eyes and prayed for the first time in a long time. I didn't ask for miracles. I didn't ask for Richard to come back. I just said, "Lord, if you're still with me, show me how to keep going." I thought family would catch me. Maybe not fix it all, but at least soften the fall. But sometimes the people closest to you are the first to step back when things get hard. I called Linda again, my sister. This time I didn't need comfort. I needed help, milk, a little cash, a ride even. Just something to get through the week. She answered, but her tone was different, stiff, almost annoyed. "I've got a lot going on right now, Maggie." I waited. She sighed, long and heavy, like I was a burden just for existing. "I just think maybe you should have seen this coming," she said. I blinked. "What?" "I mean, Richard always seemed a little distant. You gave up your whole life for him. That was your choice." That last part sat in the air like smoke. Your choice. As if I hadn't made sacrifices for all the right reasons. As if raising 4 children, keeping a home together, cooking every meal, and giving up my career was some reckless decision I made alone. "I'm not asking for a lecture, Linda. I'm asking for help." There was a pause. Then her voice softened, just enough to sound polite, but still cold underneath. "I really wish I could. I do. But we're trying to save for a vacation. Things are tight." I said, "Thank you," not because I meant it, but because I needed the conversation to end before I started crying. After that, I stopped calling. The next betrayal didn't come from family. It came from someone I thought was a friend, Evelyn. We'd known each other since we were 20. She was there when Emily was born. She brought me casseroles when I lost my mother. She knew things about me I'd never said out loud to anyone else, so when she invited me over for coffee, I went. Her house was perfect, like always. Fresh flowers on the table, fancy cookies arranged like a magazine spread. She smiled too much. It didn't reach her eyes. "How are the girls?" she asked, sipping tea she didn't offer me. "They're okay," I said. She leaned in, voice low, like she was offering wisdom instead of judgment. "You know, men don't leave unless something's missing at home." It hit me like a slap. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She kept going. "Maybe you got too comfortable. Let yourself go a little. You used to be so polished." I looked down at my hands. No polish, no ring. Just tired fingers and cracked knuckles from washing dishes and cleaning floors. I stood up. "Thank you for the tea," I said, though she never gave me any. She blinked. "Are you upset?" "No," I lied. "I just remembered I have somewhere else to be." She didn't stop me. On the walk home, I let the tears come. No audience, no shame, just me and the sidewalk and the realization that I was truly on my own now. Even the people who had once loved me, or pretended to, were too busy explaining my pain instead of helping me out of it. That night I told myself something simple. No one's coming. Not family, not friends, not him, no one. And strangely, that truth gave me power, because once you stop waiting to be saved, you can start learning how to save yourself. The week after Evelyn's words, the house felt heavier than usual, not from noise, but from the quiet. The kind of quiet that sits on your chest while you're trying to breathe. I stopped answering calls, not that many came. The mailbox kept filling up with bills and silence. The girls started arguing more. Small things. Who used the last piece of bread? Who didn't flush? Who got to hold the remote? It wasn't their fault. They were just children trying to make sense of a world that suddenly had holes in it. I was standing at the sink, washing dishes with cold water, because the hot had been cut off 2 days ago, when there was a knock at the door. I dried my hands on my jeans and opened it. Pastor Daniel stood there, holding a bag of groceries and a calm smile. He didn't say anything right away. He didn't have to. I stepped aside. "I didn't come to preach," he said gently. "Just wanted to make sure you had something on the stove." I wanted to tell him we were fine, that I had things under control, that I didn't need charity. Instead, I said, "Thank you," and meant it. He set the bag on the counter. Cans of soup, a loaf of bread, some pasta, a bag of apples. I stared at it like it was gold. Then he looked around and said, "You know, the church basement needs a little cleaning this week. The budget's tight, but there's a little something we could offer. Nothing big." I nodded before he even finished. "I'll take it." He smiled. "It's not much. It's enough." He looked at me, then at the closed bedroom door where the girls were napping and said, "They're lucky to have you." I didn't answer. Compliments hurt more when you don't feel like you deserve them. The next morning I walked into the church basement with a mop in one hand, and my chin held higher than it had been in weeks. It smelled like old wood and dust, the kind of smell that clings to memories. I scrubbed floors until my back ached. I cleaned toilets, wiped down tables, emptied trash bins, stacked chairs. No one saw me do it, and maybe that was the best part. For the first time in a long time, I was doing something that wasn't about him, or the past, or what people thought of me. It was just work, and I was grateful for it. When I came home, the girls had drawn me pictures. Little crayon hearts, stick figures holding hands, the word Mom in crooked letters. Sophie handed me hers with a grin. "You got a job?" I nodded. "Does that mean we're rich now?" she asked. I laughed for the first time in weeks. A real laugh, quiet but full. "No, baby," I said, "but it means we're not stuck." That night I stood in the doorway of their bedroom, watching them sleep. Chloe was snoring softly. Grace had one leg off the blanket. Emily had fallen asleep reading, the book still open on her chest. I leaned against the frame, arms crossed, and whispered to no one, "This isn't the end. Not for me. Not for them." And somewhere deep inside, something small flickered back to life. It wasn't joy, not yet, but it was a start, and that was enough. Kids feel everything, even when you try to protect them, especially then. I thought I was shielding them, keeping the lights on, making meals stretch, hiding the bills at the bottom of the drawer. But pain doesn't need a name to make itself known. It leaks through the walls. It shows up at school, on the playground, in the quiet moments between laughter. I got the first call from the principal on a Thursday afternoon. "Sophie got into a fight," the secretary said. "A fight?" "She hit another student." My first instinct was disbelief. My second was guilt. At the school, I found Sophie in the hallway, sitting on a bench, arms crossed, face red and swollen with unspoken rage. Her curly hair was a mess, her glasses crooked. I crouched beside her. "What happened?" She didn't look at me. "He said Dad left because you're poor, because you're old, that nobody wants you." The words stung, not because they were true, but because some part of me had thought them in my own mind. In the middle of the night, in the silence. "He doesn't know anything," I said gently. "I know," she said, "but I still hit him." I wanted to scold her. Tell her violence wasn't the answer. But I also knew what it felt like to be humiliated and helpless. And I couldn't punish her for feeling what I felt every day. "You can't let words like that get inside you," I told her. even when they sound like the truth?" She nodded, but her eyes were still burning. The next week, Grace came home crying because a girl told her they couldn't play anymore. Her mom said our family was messed up. Chloe stopped asking for bedtime stories. And Emily, my quiet, steady Emily, began walking home with her shoulders hunched, eyes low, like she was trying to disappear. One night, I found her sitting on the back porch, arms wrapped around her knees. I sat down beside her. "You're not broken," I said. "None of us are." She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she whispered, "Are we embarrassing?" That word hit me like a fist. "No," I said, firmer than I meant. "We are not embarrassing. We are survivors. Do you understand me?" She didn't answer, but she leaned her head on my shoulder. We sat there until the sun dipped behind the trees. That night I wrote something new in my notebook. They're watching me, every moment, every day. If I crumbled, so would they. If I stood tall, maybe, just maybe, they'd believe they could too. So I did the only thing I could. I kept going. I kept cleaning the church. I took on another job sweeping at the corner diner after closing. I mended clothes instead of buying new ones. I cut coupons again, not to feel smart, but to survive. And through it all, I kept telling them, day after day, one truth they could hold on to. We're going to be okay, and one day they'll respect our name again. Time didn't heal everything, but it moved forward, whether I was ready or not. One day turned into two. A week became a month, then a year, and then another. I didn't notice the change at first, but it came slowly, like spring after a long winter. Quiet, steady, unapologetic. The girls grew taller, stronger, louder in some ways, quieter in others. Chloe learned how to tie her shoes. Grace stopped crying when someone looked at her funny. Sophie asked harder questions, the kind that made me stop what I was doing just to breathe. And Emily, she became the second mother in the house before I even realized I was letting her. We learned how to live with less. I shopped at thrift stores, I cut my own hair. I made casseroles out of scraps and watched the girls eat like it was a feast. I cleaned houses during the day and washed dishes at the diner at night. On Sundays, I still mopped the church floors, still smiled at Pastor Daniel when he handed me my modest envelope. No one ever saw how tired I was, and I never let them. Evelyn tried again, once. It was at a school fundraiser. She saw me working the bake sale table, apron on, sleeves rolled up. She walked over in her perfect heels, holding a plate of cupcakes she definitely hadn't baked. "You're still doing all this by yourself?" she asked, voice soaked in sugar. I looked at her but didn't answer. I just handed a child a slice of banana bread and moved on. I had no time for empty words, no space for small talk dressed up as concern. I had mouths to feed and a reputation to rebuild, not for them, but for my daughters, for our name. Some nights I still cried, not out of weakness, but because I couldn't afford to carry it all in silence anymore. I let it out in the shower, in the car, in the early hours before dawn, when the world was still asleep and no one could hear me. But every morning I got up, I packed lunches, I braided hair, I made coffee with the last spoonful of grounds and kissed scraped knees and signed report cards and paid down $1 more on the light bill. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest, and it was mine. One night I stood at the doorway of the girls' room again. Emily was reading, now with real books instead of picture ones. Sophie was humming, sketching something in a notebook. Grace and Chloe had fallen asleep together in the same bed, tangled like roots. I watched them and felt something rise in my chest. Not pride exactly, but proof. They were okay. We were okay. I walked back into the kitchen, sat at the same table where I once cried over bills, and opened my notebook. On the last page, I wrote, "They'll never know how much I bled for them, and that's exactly how I want it. Because real strength doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to last. It was a Tuesday, ordinary in every way. The girls were at school. I had just come home from cleaning a house on the far side of town. My hands smelled like lemon bleach and cheap gloves. I was tired. But it was a good tired. The kind that came with knowing I had kept the lights on for one more month. I was halfway through reheating last night's rice when someone knocked on the door. 3 knocks, slow, measured. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked over, not expecting anything but maybe a package or a neighbor. But when I opened the door, it was him, Richard, older, grayer, thinner. His hair was still neat, but his eyes had lost that shine of pride he used to carry like armor. His suit was worn, wrinkled around the collar. The man who once left like he had everything figured out now looked like someone who had run out of answers. I didn't say anything, neither did he. He looked past me into the house, into the life he had abandoned, like he was trying to measure the damage, or maybe the distance. "Hi, Maggie," he finally said. I kept my hand on the door. "What do you want?" He took a breath, hesitated. I was in the area. Thought I'd stop by, see how you were doing." I almost laughed. "You were in the area?" He nodded like that meant something, like time hadn't passed, like birthdays hadn't been missed and tears hadn't been cried and dinners hadn't been stretched thinner than dignity. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, "about everything, about us." "There is no us, Richard." He swallowed, looked down at his shoes, then back up at me. I made a mistake. I raised my eyebrows, surprised at how calm I felt. Not angry, not even hurt. Just tired of men showing up only when their world falls apart. "Did she leave you?" I asked. His silence was answer enough. For a moment I saw it all. The years I spent falling apart in silence, rebuilding from nothing, wiping tears off 4 little faces while holding back my own. And now here he was. Not because he missed us, but because life hadn't gone the way he thought it would. "The girls are at school," I said flat. He nodded. "I'd like to see them if that's okay." I didn't move. "You lost that right when you walked away." "I was lost," he said. "So were we. We just didn't get the luxury of disappearing." He looked like he wanted to say more, to plead, to explain, but I had no room left for that. Behind me, I heard the sound of the front gate. The girls were home. Emily walked up the porch first, then Sophie, then Grace and Chloe, backpacks bouncing. They saw him before I could close the door. They froze. No screams, no hugs, just confusion. Emily stepped forward, slow and guarded. Sophie narrowed her eyes. Grace clung to Chloe, who held her hand tighter than I'd ever seen. "Why is he here?" Emily asked. Richard tried to smile. "Just visiting," he said. None of them moved. None of them smiled. I turned to them and spoke clearly. He was just leaving. They didn't say a word. They just stood behind me, silent, strong, exactly the way I had raised them to be. Richard looked at me again, eyes pleading now. I just wanted a second chance. I looked at my daughters, then back at him. "You had one," and I closed the door. He came back the next day. This time he brought flowers, cheap ones from the corner store, still had the plastic around them. He stood on the porch like a lost man, not a guilty one. I let him in. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. The girls were at a neighbor's house. I had asked them to stay there for the afternoon. Whatever this was going to be, they didn't need to see it. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I used to cry over unpaid bills, where I once counted every penny just to keep the water running. I sat across from him. The silence stretched. He cleared his throat, looked around the kitchen like he was trying to remember it, like it had changed without his permission. "You've done well," he said. "The girls, they look healthy, happy." "They are." He nodded. I wasn't expecting that. I raised an eyebrow. "You weren't expecting them to survive without you?" He looked down. "No, I guess I thought it'd be different." I waited. He looked up. "I messed up, Maggie. I know that. I left when I should have stayed. I let my pride, my stupidity ruin everything. Still, I waited. I thought I wanted something else. I thought I needed more. But all I did was lose the only good thing I ever had. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. Tired of this script. Tired of the weight of men realizing too late what women carry in silence. "You didn't just leave me," I said. "You left them. You disappeared like none of us mattered." "I was scared," he said. "And I wasn't?" He blinked. "You think I wasn't scared waking up every day with 4 kids and no money? You think I didn't lie awake at night wondering how I'd feed them, clothe them, keep them warm? You think I didn't want to run away too?" He looked away, ashamed now. "But I didn't," I continued, "because I'm not the kind of person who runs. I'm the kind that stays, that fights, that figures it out even when there's nothing left to give." "I know," he said quietly. "You don't." I leaned forward. "You don't know what it's like to dry their tears and hide your own. To wear the same shoes for 2 winters so they could have new ones. To cut your own food portions in half and pretend you weren't hungry." "I do now," he said, voice cracking. "But it's too late." He looked up. "I just want to be part of their lives again." I shook my head. "That's not up to you. It's up to them. And they're old enough now to remember who stayed and who ran." Silence again. He stood up slowly. "I'll respect whatever you decide." I nodded. "I already have." He left the flowers on the counter. I threw them away as soon as the door closed. Later, when the girls came home, I didn't say anything right away. But Emily looked at me and knew. "Did he come back?" she asked. "Yes." "Did you let him in?" "Yes." "Is he coming back again?" I paused. "Not unless you want him to." Emily nodded slowly, then looked at her sisters. None of them said a word. But the message was clear. They didn't need him, not anymore. We had already done the impossible. We survived. It happened on a Saturday. The town was hosting a community day at the park, the kind with folding tables, barbecue smoke in the air, and kids running in every direction. There was music, raffles, church booths, and hand-painted signs. The kind of event where everyone sees everyone. I wasn't planning to go, but the girls wanted to. So I packed a lunch, tied Grace's hair in braids, helped Chloe with her sneakers, and told myself I'd stay for an hour, maybe 2. People stared when we arrived, but it was different now. Not pity, not gossip, recognition. Over the years, I had become someone they couldn't ignore, the woman who kept showing up, the one who worked every job, brought her kids to every school event, smiled even when she had nothing left. Pastor Daniel waved us over and handed the girls little tickets for free lemonade. Evelyn was nearby, pretending not to see us. I didn't mind. We found a spot near the music. I watched the girls dance barefoot in the grass, laughing, chasing each other like the past hadn't marked them, and maybe in some way it hadn't. That's when I saw him. Richard. He stood near the edge of the crowd, alone, watching. He looked smaller somehow, like life had shaved him down. People nodded politely, but no one really talked to him. And when his eyes met mine, he didn't approach. He just nodded once, a silent apology, or maybe just an ending. And then Evelyn walked up to him. I couldn't hear what she said, but I could read her lips. She didn't take you back. He shook his head. She looked over at me, then back at him, and raised one perfect eyebrow. That's what happens when you leave a woman like her, I imagined her saying. She figures out she never needed you to begin with. I turned away before she could see me watching. Instead, I focused on Chloe, who had climbed up onto the small stage and was waving at me like she was the mayor. Emily sat beside me, quiet, proud. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm more than okay." And I meant it. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was standing tall, not because someone gave me permission, but because I had earned the ground beneath my feet. The whispers had faded. The pity was gone. In its place was something heavier, but kinder. Respect. Not the loud kind, not applause or awards, just the kind that makes people look at you differently. The kind that comes from living through fire and walking out whole.